Listen closely to the wind. This isn't just air moving across the dunes. It is the breath of millions who were buried beneath this dust 4,000 years ago. Imagine you are standing in a desert where, for miles, there is nothing but heat and silence. But here on the banks of the Euphrates, something is stirring. This is Babylon, but not the Golden City of legends yet. Right now it is a mound of mud where men are mixing earth and water with their bare hands to bake the very first bricks of an empire. The sweat of these laborers flows like the river itself. They have no iron tools, only the raw ambition of their souls. They aren't just building a wall. They are weaving the first great dream of humanity. Every brick laid is a prayer to thee, God Marduk. If you walk through these narrow streets, you can smell the damp earth and the heavy scent of burning cedar. People sleep on the flat roofs of their small mud houses, searching for a cool breeze in the suffocating heat. But in those streets there is a hidden fear. The world outside is cruel. The Elamites and the Akkadians are like wolves, waiting for the right moment to swallow this tiny settlement whole. Then the tides of time shift. A man ascends the throne with a cold gaze and a mind like a storm, Hammurabi. When he takes the crown, the people expect another warlord who will only bring death. But Hammurabi is thinking of something the world has never seen. He walks the riverbanks at night, realizing that a city can be conquered with a sword, but it can only be ruled with justice. Imagine a scene, a crowded, dusty marketplace. A poor farmer, his face burnt black by the sun, comes weeping into the king's court. He cries that a wealthy merchant has stolen his land and struck his son. In the old world, the rich walked free.
Before me? I seek only justice, my lord. Justice, you are nothing.
But Hammurabi stands, his fist is clenched. He declares that the law of the earth is over. The law of the heavens has arrived. He orders a massive pillar of black diorite. It takes months to carve. The surface is polished until a man can see his own soul reflected in the stone. Then with sharp needles they carve the marks we now call cuneiform. This was the world's first code of law. When that stone was raised in the heart of Babylon, the entire city gathered in a silence so deep you could hear the river's flow. The elders say that when the sun hit that black stone, the people's eyes trembled. Carved into the rock was a chilling decree. If a man puts out the eye of another, his eye shall be put out. It was harsh, it was terrifying, but for the first time it was the same for everyone. After that day, theft died in the streets of Babylon. Merchants left their gold in the open, knowing that Hammurabi's justice was a ghost, standing behind every wall, watching. But Hammurabi was not just a master of law. He was the master of water. He commanded thousands to tear open the chest of the desert. They dug canals that carried the Euphrates miles into the parched wasteland. The dry earth, thirsty for centuries, suddenly turned emerald green. Date palms grew so high they cast shadows over the city walls. Babylon was no longer a village, it was a paradise in the middle of a graveyard. Travelers began to arrive from every corner of the earth, from the pyramids of Egypt to the distant Indus Valley. They brought silk spices and strange stories. 100 languages echoed in the bazaars. At night, when the oil lamps flickered, the sound of music drifted from high terraces. This was the golden age where every man felt he would live forever.
Let it last.
But death hides behind every great achievement. Hammurabi was growing old. The eyes that once terrified kings were now clouded with fatigue.
My sons, heed my words.
He called his sons and whispered, I have turned mud into gold. See that you do not turn it back into mud. But the heat of the throne often burns the bonds of blood. As Hammurabi's final breath escaped him enemies in, the dark corners of the world began to sharpen their blades. From the north came the men of iron, the Hittites. They brought a metal that turned bronze into dust. The high walls of Babylon, once a pride, were about to become a cage for the innocent. This was the ultimate test. Could Hammurabi's justice save his people from the wolves of war, or was this golden dream about to vanish in a cloud of smoke? The golden age of Hammurabi did not end with a whisper. It ended with the screams of a city under fire as the old king's body was laid to rest in the cold earth. The iron-hearted Hittites were already crossing the northern mountains. They were not like the Babylonians. They did not care for poetry or the stars. They cared only for the crush of bone under their heavy chariot wheels. Imagine the panic in the streets. The merchants who once bartered gold for silk were now bartering their lives for a chance to hide. The great Ishtar gate, which had stood as a symbol of welcome, was now bolted shut with thick timber and bronze. From the towers, the Babylonian archers looked out and saw a horizon that had turned black, not from a storm, but from the soot of 1,000 enemy campfires. The Hittites brought a new kind of terror. They didn't just attack, they waited. They cut off the canals Hammurabi had dug. With such pride, the emerald fields turned brown, the date palms withered. Thirst became a sharper enemy than the sword. Inside the walls, the people began to question the gods. Where is Marduk? They whispered in the dark.
Marduk, hear my plea.
Why has the black stone of justice not saved us from the iron of the north? Then came the night of the final breach. The Hittites used massive battering rams covered in wet hides to resist the fire arrows. The sound of wood splintering against the city. Gates echoed like the heartbeat of a dying giant. When the gates finally gave way, the chaos was absolute. The neighborhoods where children once played were turned into graveyards in a single hour. The invaders did the unthinkable. They entered the great ziggurat. They climbed the holy stairs and dragged the golden statue of Marduk down into the dirt. To the Babylonians, this was the end of the world. Their god was a prisoner. Their king was dead. Their pride was ash. The Hittites looted the gold, set the palaces on fire, and vanished back into the mountains as quickly as they had come, leaving behind a city that was nothing but a smoking skeleton. For the next 400 years, Babylon became a ghost of itself. This is the era history almost forgot, the time of the Kassites. These were mountain people who took over the ruins. They tried to speak the language of Babylon. They tried to wear its clothes, but the soul of the city was sleeping. The great libraries were covered in cobwebs, the canals filled with silt. But even in this darkness, the seed of Babylon was alive. Deep in the ruins, the scribes continued to write. They protected the old clay tablets as if they were their own children. They knew that empires rise and fall, but words are immortal. They waited for a leader who would remember who they were. They waited through the centuries of Assyrian cruelty. The Assyrians were the most brutal empire the world had ever seen. Their kings like Sennacherib took pleasure in the pain of Babylon. Sennacherib was so jealous of Babylon's ancient beauty that he ordered the city to be completely leveled. He diverted the very river Euphrates to flow over the ruins, hoping to wash the memory of Babylon off the face of the earth. He wanted to drown the city forever. but you cannot drown a dream. Every time the water receded, the mud remained. And from that mud, the people of Babylon rose again. They rebuilt their homes with the same silt that was meant to destroy them. They were a people made of stubborn earth. For centuries, the world thought Babylon was a corpse. The Assyrians had burned it, flooded it, and mocked its gods. But deep within the ruins, a fire was smoldering. The people were waiting for a spark. And that spark was a man named Nabopolassar. He was a leader born from the shadows of oppression. He looked at the chains of Assyria and decided that his children would die as free, men or not at all.
Attack for Babylon! Charge! Ambush, fight back!
In a series of lightning strikes, Nabopolassar did the impossible. He united the tribes, forged alliances with the Medes, and marched on the Assyrian capital of Nineveh. The world watched in shock as the Invincible Assyrians were wiped from the map. The predator had become the prey. Babylon was free. But the true legend was his son Nebuchadnezzar II. When Nebuchadnezzar took the throne, he didn't just want a city. He wanted a masterpiece that would make the gods jealous.
I make this vow of eternity.
He looked at the dusty ruins of his ancestors and made a vow. I will make this city the center of the universe. He began a construction project so massive it required every spare hand in the empire. Imagine the scene at the Ishtar gate. This wasn't just a door, it was a portal to another world. Nebuchadnezzar ordered millions of bricks to be glazed in a deep hypnotic blue, the color of the evening sky. Across these blue walls, he placed golden lions and dragons, their eyes made of precious stones that seemed to follow you as you walked. To a traveler coming from the dusty desert, this gate looked like a miracle. It was a statement to the world: Babylon is back, and it is immortal. Beyond the gate lay the procession way, a road paved with stones brought from the furthest mountains, lined with walls that whispered the glory of the king. And at the heart of it all rose the Etemenanki, the Tower of Babel, a ziggurat so high that the priests on the top floor were said to talk directly to the stars. On a clear night, the golden top of the tower could be seen for 50 miles, a beacon of human defiance against the silence of the heavens. But Nebuchadnezzar's greatest feat was born not of war, but of a broken heart. His queen Amytis was a princess from the lush green mountains of Media. In the flat burning plains of Mesopotamia, she withered like a flower without water. She missed the forests, she missed the mist on the hills. To save his queen, Nebuchadnezzar defied nature itself. He built the Hanging Gardens. Imagine a mountain made of brick rising terrace after terrace into the sky. He engineered a system of hidden pumps and chains that lifted the cool waters of the Euphrates hundreds of feet into the air. He planted trees from every corner of the known world. Oaks, cedars, and exotic flowers that smelled of honey and rain. From a distance, it looked like a green forest was floating in the air, defying the gravity of the desert. It was a monument to love built with the blood and sweat of an empire. Babylon became the university of the ancient world, while the rest of the world was fighting over scraps of land. Babylonian astronomers were mapping the stars. They were the first to realize that the year had 12 signs. They were the first to divide the circle into 360 degrees. Every time we count 60 seconds in a minute, we are using the heartbeat of Babylon. The city was a library of stone, a fortress of knowledge that guarded the secrets of the universe. But as the gold grew brighter, the heart of the empire grew darker. Wealth brings pride, and pride brings blindness. Nebuchadnezzar began to believe his own myth. He stood on the roof of his palace, looking at the hanging forests and the golden towers, and he forgot the lesson of the black stone of Hammurabi. He forgot that empires are not built on gold, but on the spirit of the people. The air began to change. In the east, a new power was rising, the Persians. And their king Cyrus was unlike any enemy Babylon had ever faced. He didn't want to burn the city, he wanted to own it. The stage was set for the final act. The night of the great feast was coming, a night where the wine would flow like the river, and the gates would be left unguarded, a night where the greatest city in history would fall, without a single drop of blood being shed in battle. The year was 539 BC. Babylon was at its most arrogant. Its walls were so thick that 2 chariots could race side by side on top of them. Its granaries were full enough to feed the population for 20 years. To the people inside, Babylon was not just a city, it was an invincible god. But outside the walls, the earth was trembling. Cyrus the Great, the visionary king of Persia, had arrived. He didn't launch a suicidal attack on the gates. He didn't build ladders. He did something far more terrifying. He sat in the desert and waited. He watched the Euphrates River, the very lifeblood that flowed through the heart of the city. And he saw not a river, but a road. Inside the palace, the air was thick with the scent of roasted meats and expensive wine. Belshazzar, the prince of Babylon, was hosting a feast for 1,000 of his lords. He felt so safe behind his blue-tiled walls that he ordered the sacred gold and silver vessels, stolen from the Temple of Jerusalem generations ago, to be brought out for his guests to drink from. It was the ultimate act of defiance against the divine. Then the music stopped. A sudden chill swept through the grand hall. The torches flickered. In the silence, a ghostly, disembodied hand appeared near the great lampstand. With a finger of fire, it began to write 4 mysterious words on the plaster of the wall. Mene, mene, tekel parsin. The prince's face turned as white as ash, his knees knocked together in terror. No wise man in Babylon could read the flickering script. Finally, the elders brought in a prophet who
Mene, mene, tekel uparsin,
spoke the truth that no one wanted to hear. Your kingdom has been weighed in the balance and found wanting. This night your empire is given to the Persians. But while the lords were frozen in fear, inside the palace a miracle of engineering was happening. Outside, Cyrus had commanded his army to dig a massive canal upstream. In the dead of night, they diverted the mighty Euphrates River into a dry lake bed. Slowly, the water level inside the city began to drop. The unbeatable moat was vanishing. The riverbed, which had protected Babylon for 1,000 years, was now a wide, muddy highway leading straight under the city gates. The Babylonian guards were drunk celebrating the festival, confident that the river would protect them. They never saw the shadows moving through the mud. Thousands of Persian soldiers marched silently under the iron river gates. By the time the sun rose, the golden city had changed hands. There was no massive battle. There was no burning of libraries. Cyrus walked through the Ishtar gate not as
Sheath your blades.
Is the fighting over?
a destroyer, but as a liberator. He ordered his soldiers to put away their swords. He knelt before the statue of Marduk. He freed the captives. The age of the independent Babylonian Empire was over. The crown of the world had moved to Persia. But listen, even as the Persian flag flew over the towers, the spirit of Babylon did not die. It moved into the blood of its conquerors. The science, the laws, and the stories of. This city became the foundation of the Greek, the Roman, and eventually the modern world. Today the wind still blows over the ruins. In Iraq, the blue tiles are gone. The hanging gardens are dust.